Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 162.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldimand Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster. I am here with Riley Thompson. Hi, Riley.
Hey, John.
You wanted to talk about things like getting things done, hustle culture, toxic productivity. And that's a really interesting topic to me, and I think a lot about it. So where are you coming from on it?
I am coming from the place of trying to get everything done in the shortest amount of time possible, while also trying not to burn myself out, which are goals that are seemingly unattainable. Currently, I am working a part-time job. I'm volunteering on the side. I'm filling out master's applications, and I'm still on the job search for a full-time job. So when it comes to, and I'm a student also. So when it comes to being on the go, I'm on the go all the time. When I'm not at work, I'm volunteering. When I'm not volunteering, I'm doing school. When I'm not doing school, I'm doing something else. So it feels like there's unconscious pressure to meet deadlines as fast as possible. And there's not a whole lot of talk about how to cope with that stress or what that stress looks like. You know, people hear the terms burnt out or hustle culture and all these terms, and they just shake their head and they think it's some kind of millennial Gen Z epidemic where people are being lazy and they can't work like they used to, but that's not the case. People aren't being educated on what it's like to have a healthy lifestyle between work and life, work-life balance. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I have talked to some other students about this, and I am a much older generation. I'm not Gen Z or Gen X. I thought I was Gen X for a while, but it turns out I'm right on the border. So I'm boomer, boo. But I still call myself Gen X because I'm on the border. I do understand things, I think, by talking to people. And I think it's a little different than what you're describing. So the way I see it, whatever people think and say to you, my experience is a bit different, which is I feel as if you guys have that hustle culture sentiment, creating all kinds of pressure and distress because of what you're seeing. So when I grew up, obviously I didn't have social media. I didn't have to look at LinkedIn, right? So I don't see all these people succeeding in all these things and doing all these things. And I'm not comparing myself and thinking the only way I can get into this X program or this Y school is to do a gazillion things. And so I go doing all these things, and it's a lot of pressure. Right. So the thing about hustle culture to me is it feels like it's imposed on you as opposed to it being an organic, getting busy type situation.
Yeah, I could see it from both perspectives. I think ultimately what made me think of hustle culture is just how the workforce has changed so much in the last, say, 50 years. Mainly due to technology and the pandemic, the new work from home. I feel like borders are kind of fading away between professionalism and, work and life. I'll just say that. Borders are fading between work and life, mainly due to work from home and things like that. So the hustle culture kind of comes from people not knowing how to turn themselves off from work, I guess, probably because it's a lot harder to escape it now that so many people are working from home or doing side gigs or becoming influencers or doing all these smaller projects where it's not just one source of income anymore like it used to be. It's so much bigger than that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. One of the things that occurred to me is I have this kind of distinction in my mind. So the problem I'm having is I think hustle culture is there, and there's a kind of a negative hustle culture that I wish wasn't there. But I also think lately I've been talking a lot and thinking a lot about leaning into hard work and compartmentalizing. And so when it's time to work, I work. And I think one of the things you're saying, I think more so work life bleeds into personal life as opposed to vice versa. So because people are working from home, because work's always there, because you're doing multiple jobs, you have your formal job and maybe you're doing some influencing stuff or something else and you're trying to make some money in another way.
Like a podcast?
Like, well, yeah, but this isn't actually a business. So
I know.
So when you're at home, all this other stuff is bleeding into your home life, right? So you don't get a break. And one of the things I was thinking was, I wonder if, like in my own mind, I kind of distinguish the kind of hustle culture stuff is what is coming from the outside and putting pressure on me to do stuff. So for example, for whatever reason, I have the impression that I'm told that I have to do this to get that. So if I want to apply to a certain program, I've got to do 10 volunteer jobs. So I'm going to do 10 volunteer jobs because that's what I'm told I need to do to get the result I want. That kind of hustle doesn't make me feel good. So that's kind of got the negative connotation to it that you're talking about. However, if there's something that does make me feel good, a podcast, then I don't mind putting all the time and energy into it. And I don't feel like it's hustle culture. I feel like it's rewarding. So that's why I have this kind of idea I'm exploring with you to think, I wonder if it's the motivation that makes it hustle culture or rewarding hard work.
That's a good thought. And, I'm almost thinking like what defines a culture, or not what defines a culture, what defines a hustle? Like what makes it a hustle as opposed to a job?
Yeah. And maybe because right now, many of the things you're trying to do are to be accepted into something, a school program, a full-time job, that kind of stuff. And that just adds a whole different pressure because things are out of your control and you're not sure what you need to do to get the result you want. And so you got to try all these different things. So I can imagine in that situation, it really feels like hustle culture. And then the way you actually asked the question when you said, hey, why don't we talk about this, that, and the other thing? One of them was, are we overvaluing getting things done?
What I was thinking was what the definition of success is. I'll go back to what I was saying before about how the workforce has kind of changed. Before defining success was climbing up the ladder in, a corporate job or finally retiring after being with the same company for 30 years. But people are doing that less and less now. People are jumping from job to job. They aren't sticking with the same things as long as they used to be. And they're more entrepreneurial than they ever were before. The gig economy is at an all-time high where people are just starting their own small businesses while pursuing a job on full time. So I guess the definition of success has changed. And I feel like the people who are staying at the same job or who aren't participating in hustle culture are feeling the pressure to do that because I feel like they're not being productive enough.
And I think that is a generational thing because a lot of people in my generation and a lot of people I work with, and I've worked with people for quite a while, I don't get the feeling that they're feeling like they have to shift around. I do feel like a lot of younger people I talk to. So one of our former co-hosts, Sammy, pointed out that there's an advantage that young people see in moving around because if you have a good job at one place and you work there for a few years and there's an opportunity somewhere else, chances are they're going to give you a higher pay to move, right? So you can increase your salary quicker. But still, a lot of people in kind of older generations are still kind of that mindset where they're in a good place and they like where they are. And so why change? So you got all these different feelings out in the workplace. Well, let me ask you this. So right now, this is kind of me testing my little theory that I'm working on. So right now, you're very busy and a lot of the stuff has to do with doing things that you hope will impress somebody so you can get into a job or a school or something like that, which has its own kind of level of pressure. Are there any things you're doing in your life that take the time, that take the energy, but you don't feel that kind of hustle culture pressure, but rather are like, yeah, no, I like doing this?
Yeah, I mean, this podcast is a great example. Again, I know it's not a business, so it's maybe not the best example, but this podcast is one thing, there's time invested in it. There's thought and energy put into it. Same with my other volunteering gig that I do. I volunteer with Kids Help Phone, where I'm not doing it necessarily to look good on a resume, although it does help. I really enjoy it. And I find myself spending a good chunk of my weeks doing that, not because I feel like I need to, but it's fun and it's really interesting. And I feel like that's how it will also help me look good on a resume, which is part of it, but not the whole picture.
Let me just throw this out there then that, I'm older. I've got the benefit of having a job and everything's fine. And actually things have gone well. So I've been fortunate in my life. So it's easy for me to say this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not all about measuring success, right? It's not about pursuing success. And the more I talk about wellness, the more I think about this kind of stuff, I think it's more about living your life. Like that's what you should be doing, living your life. And there's going to be successes and failures along the way, and work is part of it. But if you can find a way to live your life without feeling judged, without feeling like you have to be measured for success by other people's concepts of success, but rather you're gravitating to do the things that you enjoy doing, that you feel rewarding, that you feel like you're yourself when you do it, then I think it kind of takes away a little bit from that whole feeling of hustle culture, because now you're doing what you want to do. So anyway, I'm going to keep working on that theory of, is it the fact that you're being pressured to do something, you're being measured, that makes it feel like hustle culture, compared to it's hard work but rewarding, which doesn't feel like hustle culture.
It's like that saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I think that's a lot of what your theory is trying to put out there.
Yeah, that it wouldn't feel like pressure, wouldn't feel like hustle, wouldn't feel like success if you were doing something you just love to do.
Mm.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. I see today's interview as relating to overall balance as opposed to a category of wellness. And we chat with someone who's living a well-rounded life, trying many different things. And I suspect she'll keep learning and experiencing new activities indefinitely. Welcome, Sue Willoughby.
Hello. How you doing today, John?
It's great to have you back, Sue. I really enjoyed our last chat. Sue Willoughby is the founder of Willoughby Coaching, where women over 40 confront their personal obstacles and change the trajectory of their lives. Raised by a single alcoholic parent, Sue struggled with low self-esteem and learned from an early age to be self-sufficient and embrace discomfort. She came out at the age of 17 and struggled to find her place in the gay community. She attempted suicide at 19 and was on a path of living hard and playing harder. Sue found coaching through her lifelong love of horses, and Sue practices what she preaches by getting out of her comfort zone. She's been a nightclub DJ, a stand-up comic, an actor, a private pilot, a roller derby referee, and more. Sue resides outside the Seattle area with a horse named Moose, 2 mini long-haired Datsuns, Benny and Buddy, and a VW bus called Arlo. So Sue, I'm more and more convinced that working to become a well-rounded person helps us build resilience and find balance. And it might even be the secret to living a good life. So let me start by asking you about some of the many things you've done, just because they're fun. We interviewed you recently about Equus coaching, but what about a DJ? You're a DJ and a stand-up comic. What's it like to be a DJ in a nightclub?
So it's a good question. The reason that I wanted to be a DJ is, when I came out and I wanted to, meet people, meet women and so forth, I'm like, well, heck, if I'm either behind the bar or in the DJ booth, they're going to see me. And I figured that was a really good way to meet people. So that's what took me to that in the first place. I always loved music, and I like to dance, and I like to, but I really wanted to be in that position of, I'm the coolest one here. So I'm just being honest with you.
So in about 87, 88, 89, I was a bartender in Montreal, and there was a little DJ booth, and they actually had LPs, like vinyl. Is that the kind of stuff you were doing?
Oh, heck yeah. And I would do gigs, and I would travel with, big crates of 12-inch vinyl. I mean, because that's what we used back in the day. I mean, we're talking like 80s, late 70s, early 80s, into the 90s. It was more mid 80s to early 90s. So kind of dating myself here, but yeah, it was fun. And, and you get to be up in this booth and you were watching everyone. Right. And of course, you're like the star of the show.
Okay. So then maybe the spotlight's not quite spotlight enough. Is that what got you onto stand-up comedy? Like now everybody's looking at you. What happened there?
Right. Oh my God. I got to tell you. Well, when I moved to the Seattle area from the East Coast back in 1991, I had always wanted to do acting and I had done some stuff like that. So I took some acting classes and I was petrified. I did not have the self-confidence and the emotional intelligence that I have now, but I still wanted to do it. So but I always wanted to do stand-up comedy. I was always like, okay, so here's a good example, right? When somebody says, "Oh, you're a really good cook. You should open a restaurant."
Right.
The people are like, "You're really funny." Well, here's the thing. In my intro, you talked about how I grew up. So that put me in a position of discomfort from the get-go. At least I had my sense of humor. And so I took that sense of humor and I went on stage and took some stand-up comedy classes. I'd go to open mics and stuff like that. I quickly realized it's not the way I wanted to earn a living. It was nerve-wracking on a good day, but it was an experience. And I, talk about putting yourself out there. I mean, that is the ultimate put yourself out there kind of a thing.
Yeah. I actually tried a open mic stand-up comedy once. I think it went pretty well. There's a whole discussion about that. And I maybe tried something. I tried telling a story and I did it in a certain way that didn't really people got the joke a couple, too late after I was still, anyway. At the end, everybody gave me a big round of applause and I got some amazing tips by the other comedians. And I'm sure at some point I'll try it again and have a little different rhythm. But it was fun. But you're right, it's nerve-wracking.
Was one of those tips, don't quit your day job?
Well, I never planned on doing that anyway. But no, they were much nicer than that. Now, how do you get to be a roller derby referee? I mean, come on.
So when I was a kid, I grew up watching the bank track skaters on TV. I would be glued to the TV every Saturday morning watching the Bay City Rollers and and the women were badass, right? They were badass. And I loved it. And then fast forward about 25, 30, whatever years, our landscaper that was redoing our yard said, "Hey, I'm a roller derby skater. You should come watch me skate." And I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?" So this was flat track roller skating.
Oh.
And of course, it wasn't the bank track. It's flat track, which is very different. And people they line all around the track. So you could get a roller girl in your lap in a heartbeat or a skate upside your head. It's a little dangerous. And so I started skating and I had skated when I was a kid. We'd go to the roller rink and just raise heck and, it was all fun. And now I'm much older. I actually, just quick funny story. I went and found a roller skating rink and took lessons from this old guy. He was in his 70s and he was a beautiful dance skater. So of course he tried to get me to dance skate because he's like, those roller girls, they don't know how to skate. Boom, boom, boom. So took lessons with him and it was really good, but I didn't want to be out on the track breaking bones and everything else. So I figured I'll just be a ref.
Right. So you kind of follow the pack and you make the calls.
Yeah, you kind of skate around in the center, and if you've seen Whip It or any of those other roller derby movies, you skate around in the center, you watch, you make the calls, and you try and get them when they're not elbowing somebody, and break up a fight now and again. It was pretty fun, actually.
So I'm having fun poking around some of the off the wall stuff, let's call it, that you've done, but I'm sure you've done a lot of kind of more regular stuff and lots of well-rounded stuff. Do you think that these diverse life experiences have helped you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm probably not going to have a bucket list by the time I'm done. And
your life is a bucket list.
Right. Yeah. Who needs one? And I just it's a learning experience for me and it gets me out of my comfort zone. There's no reason not to try something. And that's what I try and work with my clients and just say, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, when I choose the things that I choose, like learning to play polo at 63, the worst, a lot of bad things can happen. You break a bone, which I did. But, when you think about it, it's like, well, if you don't do it, are you going to regret not trying it? So I have some really rich, beautiful life experiences and have become part of weird little subcultures that most people don't even know exist. And so I do think that it has really just given me so much life experience that I wouldn't trade it for the world. And, jumped out of an airplane, flown an airplane, you name it.
In our last interview, you talked a little bit about sometimes women at a certain age, for example, might feel like, they're not sure what they're doing next. They're not sure, what they can contribute. I guess maybe they feel stuck. And does, so how do you kind of encourage people to get out of their comfort zone and try new things?
Sometimes it's not easy. Yeah. But a lot of it goes back to, understanding why you feel stuck. Are you really not happy with your life? Or is it just that you want to try something new and you just don't know where to start? And I think that if someone's been doing a job for a really long time and they're in their career, they may identify with that career, right? Let's say somebody has been an attorney, right, for their entire career. That's how they identify. And they might not know what their life would look like outside of that. So just trying to pull on little threads and say, well, what interests you, or what is it? The other thing is that letting people understand that even if they want to be like a sommelier, you want to go from being an attorney to being a sommelier, there's a lot of steps in between. Why don't you take a winemaking class, or why don't you take a wine appreciation class, or why don't you try something, you may be like, oh my God, there's no way I want to do that. I just want to drink the wine. Whatever it is. So I think just helping people understand that you don't have to go all in like I do. You can just take little bites, right? A little bite. You eat elephant one bite at a time. You don't shove the whole thing in your mouth.
I like that. Yeah, no, I like that point, because I actually knew somebody who was like, oh man, I want to be a pilot. This would be so great. And they were thinking long-term, like, am I going to be a commercial pilot or fly in the wilderness and all that stuff? But then they took lessons and they didn't like it was really, really tough to do the navigation and everything else. And then they got in this plane that was super small and they were crunched up and they realized that they didn't like it. So, had they maybe started by taking that small step, they wouldn't have been making all those plans. But yeah, one of the things I'm hearing is that in some cases, people don't know what to do. So maybe that's kind of easy. You just try to say, well, what do you like? And you try new things. What if you run into somebody who says, no, I do have things to do, but I'm afraid to do it, or I'm hesitant to do it, or why would I do it? How can you help that kind of person?
Yeah, once again, it's all about taking those little bites, taking those baby steps. I call them tortoise steps, right? If you ever watch a tortoise, the way they walk, they're like, they step and then they stop and then they step and then they stop. We get so habitual, all of us. I mean, myself included. You drive the same way to work. You eat at the same restaurants. You wear the same clothes, whatever it is. Take a little diversion. Take a different way home. See how that feels. Just one little thing. Go to a restaurant, have dinner by yourself. How does that feel? Do something that's going to just push you a tiny bit out of your comfort zone. Get an accountability partner, have somebody do something with you, or just do something different. One thing, just do one thing different every day for a week and see how that feels.
Oh, that's a neat concept. Yeah, I know for me, for example, like, even though I'm doing this podcast, I'm quite an introvert, and my wife is a complete extrovert. And so there's many times where she's like, why don't we do this? And I used to be like, I don't want to, and I learned, okay, I'll try it. And then we go and have a great time. So, and the other thing I like about your little baby steps is, in my life, my experience has been, I used to think of, okay, like, let's say you want to lose a whole ton of weight, or you want to do some big accomplishment. You think, oh, I can never do that. But then I would say, well, what if I could just for 1 week change my life a little bit? And I realized that if I could set these little victories, like these little challenges, I could get these little victories, and hey, now another little victory, and I would get on a roll, and then the big victories would come later. So I like that approach too.
I like the word that you used in terms, you said victory, right? That's another thing that we don't do enough of, is celebrating. We don't celebrate those little tiny tortoise steps or those little victories. It's like, at one point I went to Weight Watchers, and it wasn't because I was, had bad eating habits. I ate too much good food, was part of the problem. But, it's all about making those little micro shifts, those little micro changes, and being aware that, oh, that bagel is 4,000 points and you only got 20 points for the day. So I guess I'm not going to have the bagel. But, just once again, it goes back to awareness. What awareness can I build? And it's like, okay, I didn't eat the bagel today. Give myself a big pat on the back, or give yourself a high five or whatever. Celebrate what you can accomplish. And then you're like, I did that. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Okay, well, look, from prior show that there's a question we ask every guest. And just before I turn to that, I just wonder what your impression is. So I'm having this impression, it's really been building over the last 6 to 8 months, about how being well-rounded helps me develop resilience. And, for somebody who's boxed and got hit in the face, and somebody who's been on the stage for stand-up comedy, what do you think? Like, do you think that makes sense, that you personally have developed resilience through all this stuff?
Absolutely. I've been through a lot in my lifetime. And I really have, just through the things that I've done, because I think it took me a long time to get to that point where I could realize, oh, that was a lesson that I needed to learn. And I think if we approach things and don't beat ourselves up when things don't turn out the way we do, or the way we had anticipated, rather than looking at them as a failure, that it was like, well, that was an experience that I had. That was a lesson that I learned. And I'll keep that in mind for next time. And then you start to build up resilience. And it's not about having a thick skin. It's not about deflecting things. It's about having an experience, taking it in, sitting with it, and then saying, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I like the way you put that too, because often I think of resilience as bounce back. Like something went wrong and I bounced back. But you're right. If I think about it, I am often taking a lesson from it, or maybe next time that thing pops up in front of me, I don't react in the same way, because I know if I do, it may not work out as well for me. And so that there's life lessons in it as well. Okay. Yeah. So as you know, on our show, we explore these different areas of wellness, and we ask every guest the same question in a context where it's really hard to keep up with all of our areas of wellness at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. So Sue, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one activity you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke, I talked about having a solid morning routine and starting my day with some physical exercise. I think the other thing that I had been not neglecting, but it's a slippery slope, is food, and not making the best food choices. In the first of the year, everybody makes a resolution, and I try and get away from resolutions, and I try and educate people on the fact that, let's set intentions. So I think for me, in terms of around food and eating, is about making more healthy choices. And so I've been trying to do that, and just taking that moment, once again, taking that pause and say, okay, well, you want the, whatever it is, the candy bar or the donut or the whatever. I have a bit of a sweet tooth, in case you hadn't noticed. And just say, and if you have that piece of cake or whatever it is, not beating myself up about it. Just being like, well, had the cake or ate the pizza. What are you going to do? Okay. Once again, it's that experience, right? Okay. It happened. Put it aside and make a different choice. I won't say a better choice. I won't say a worse choice. Make a different choice next time. And you'll be like, oh, okay. You know what? It's a mindset thing, right? If you can set your mind to being like, I don't really need that cake. I don't really, I can have a taste of it. Rather, like, you go out to dinner, let's split the dessert 6 ways instead of each getting our own. So I think just making smarter choices around food that I know will make me feel better in the long run.
I have been struggling too for quite a while. Like, I lost a lot of weight and I was really good. But the problem is, for me, I have that super sweet tooth too. I make all the right choices all day, but after supper, sometime around 8:00, that's when somehow something kicks in my brain, and maybe it's the the addiction or whatever. And it's like trying to talk, well, you just have something sweet now. And it would be nice if I could not do that. So I'm working really hard at trying to take that pause and think about it. But I like your thought too of not kicking yourself too hard. And to me, the big point is, okay, so you had something sweet today. That doesn't mean you just give up and now you can eat whatever you want all day. So guess what? Starting now. I'm going to start again, starting now. So yeah. Okay, well, Sue, two really interesting chats, which I really appreciated. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. It has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thanks, John.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us. There's a thought. Popped up while running. It's Secret Project Day. Secret Project Day. I was talking about a secret project before Christmas, and I'm going to say something about that now. And more recently, last couple of weeks, I was talking about another secret project. I'm going to say something about that on sign off. Really, technically, isn't it running Popup, but still, I thought it would be fun to talk about it. A few months back, well, actually more like 6 or 8 months back, I was doing some cleaning. It was time to clean out the basement and get things reorganized. And I came across a couple old computer hard drives. Over time, since we were married, since before the kids were born, if a computer went down, I would save the hard drive thinking, well, someday I might want the data. And of course, they just sit around and nothing happened to them for years and years. And then my dad passed away and we were looking for photos. It was really hard to figure out on his computer where things were. It was a real challenge. Long story short, about 6-8 months before Christmas, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to try and organize all the kind of pictures and all the kind of souvenir type stuff on all these old hard drives. There might be some homework from the kids when they were in grade school and photos and little digital souvenirs from vacations and all that stuff. And wow, it was a lot of work and it was really hard. I just started slowly, bit by bit, looking at each file, looking at each folder, figuring out what was a photo, figuring out best ways to name things so they made sense. And the idea was at Christmas, I wanted to give each of the kids a version for them that would have kind of family memories and their memories. And so I started tinkering away and it was so much work. And at first all I could think about was how much work it was. And oh my gosh, I'm not going to get this done. And I bit off more than I can chew. But what I want to talk about is how amazing the project ended up making me feel. I have a tendency to think back and dwell on negative things that happened in my life. I have a hard time shaking that. I regularly start to spiral if I think about something, especially if I did something that I thought was, wrong or hurt somebody or showed poor character, that kind of stuff. I dwell on it. I think, oh no, I don't think I can ever make up for it and all that stuff. Or that things haven't gone the way I wanted them to. I did this project and time after time, I kept getting this big smile on my face because I saw some amazing memory with one of the kids or with all the kids or with my wife or at work or wherever it was. And I didn't save everything. I saved a selection. I was getting pretty good at keeping key pictures, not all pictures, key documents, not all documents. And by the time I was done and by the time I was able to copy that stuff onto external hard drives for each of the kids, I just had a whole different vision of the life I've lived and in a much more positive sense. And it was really rewarding and I'm really glad I did it. And it's helping me now when I start to spiral to say, hang on, John, you're just focusing on something negative. It did happen. Maybe there was a lesson there, maybe not, but that's not all of you. A lot of good things happen and I'm really trying to treasure all the good stuff in my life, including the memories. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi. I have had a fabulous week. It was the week of Sheila. It was my birthday week. And I was out doing things almost every day this week. So that was really exciting. I didn't cook once all week, which was just a really nice break. And John took me out for brunch. I asked for that for my birthday. And what did you think, John? Did I change your mind about brunch?
Well, I thought it was amazing because on my birthday, you took me to the Allura Mill.
That's true.
And when we had breakfast, we just happened to have one of the best seats in the house, right at the window, overlooking the water, the rushing water of the mill. And this time we go to the Cambridge Mill. We get this perfect seat where we're sitting over the water. So these are two really nice places close to us in Ontario. I don't know, it was a pretty picturesque time both times.
Yeah, it was awesome. And for me, this week coming up, I have a few things going on. I have a weekend getaway. It's a yoga retreat with my sister. So I'm really looking forward to that. And what about you, John?
Okay, well, on Popup, I mentioned secret project number 1, which is a pre-Christmas thing. And I also said how the last few weeks I said, I've got this secret project going on.
Yeah.
Well, I can finally say what it is.
Okay.
And to make a long story short, it's just the coolest thing. Started doing this podcast. One of our big themes is art. And then I was talking to people on the podcast and they talked about, like, I always thought art, enjoying other people's art, looking at their pictures, looking at their paintings, their statues, all that stuff, listening to music. But people said, even if you're not an artist, it's fun to do art.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
A couple years ago, I thought I would tinker with some song lyrics. Mm-hmm. And I tinkered with them. And of course, we have the amazing Cameron, our starving artist. And I sent them to him and he gave me some ideas and I tinkered with them some more. And one of them is just kind of suitable right now for some stuff that's happening. Mm-hmm. And so I said, hey, Cameron, remember that lyrics I wrote? Want to do something with them? And he did this amazing job. He said, yeah, I think it's going to be an arena rock vibe. That's what I'm seeing from this. Mm-hmm. And like, what a guy. He did this amazing song. So Cameron and I have a song out on Spotify everywhere.
How cool is that?
We even made up a band name called Sozaim, Sozaim. And there's a YouTube video. So if you want to listen to our song, which is kind of about the spirit of Canadians, it's called True North Frame of Mind. And you can find it anywhere, True North Frame of Mind, and hopefully enjoy it.
That is so amazing.
I know, it's just so crazy that, I don't know, to have like a song out there. Yeah. And, like I just wrote the lyrics. Cameron is the one who made it, turned it into music. But still, I have a piece of it and it's out there and it's just kind of cool.
And you did the video, which was really cool.
I did do the video on a budget of $0.
Yeah. And then just putting it all together, like the actual process of it, which I'm sure you're going to talk about it in a later time, was just a real cool learning experience.
Yeah. And everything took longer than I thought.
Yeah. And all the hoops you got to jump through.
But I am now a member of something called SoCan.
Yes.
So apparently that makes me an artist.
Yeah. I know. I was a member of SoCan as well.
And it's pretty exciting.
Congrats.
So we hope you all enjoyed the show, the couple little secret projects, and we will see you again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu. Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.